Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal, and on a weekly basis, we plan to bring you the biggest news and interviews in the world of combat sports. Ed, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to have the other Matt back, Mr. Matt Marsden. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good. How are you guys?
Yeah, we had Cutman Matt on one of our first shows about a year ago, so we just wanted to keep in touch with him. I get a chance to see him at some of the events occasionally, but just kind of wanted to get a rundown on how things are going in Bellator and what it's like to be a world traveler these days.
I had to say, things are just great at Bellator right now, mostly because of the DAZN contract. Like, that's opened up so many new opportunities for us. And that has allowed me, like you said, to go to a lot more places. The European series is about to kick off, like, in full gear. You know, we just had our first one. But we're on Sky Sports over in Europe now. And that, like, I honestly, as an American, I didn't realize how big of a deal that was. Like, and when I got over there and the news broke while we were actually over there, and everybody was like, "You have no idea how big you're about to blow up over here being on Sky Sports." They said they made darts internationally popular just by putting them on Sky Sports, and now you're on there. So
Wow.
they're like, if they can do that to darts, then you guys are gonna have no problem, basically. So yeah, but it's been great. You know, the fans are different in every spot. Like, you know, Dublin was great. I don't think I've ever had a crowd pop the way that we've had in Dublin. You know, I mean, no disrespect to any fans anywhere else, but they took it to a whole nother level. So that's been a
Y-
fun part of the journey.
I wonder, do you think that's part of the McGregor effect, as far as like just the having MMA in Dublin, or
So
did
those
you
guys
get?
just love fights.
Oh,
I
okay,
mean,
that's what I
they
figured.
just love fighting. But even more, like when we had the loudest pop, it was when one of the fighters walked out to "Zombie" by Cranberries, and I like they that is a serious song over there, and the entire crowd like unified and sang in unison the entire song. Like it was really weird to see a crowd come together so in unison. Normally, there's people booing for one side or the other, or you know, but every single person in that crowd was singing along to that song. It gave me goosebumps. Like I turned to somebody, I was like, "Do you see this? Like this crowd singing an old '90s Cranberry song, and I'm getting goosebumps from it." So yeah,
Yeah,
that
they're
was
they're
just
big
really.
singers out there, right? They like singing a lot. I feel
Oh
like
yeah, they like they're gonna break out in a song every 8 to 10 minutes or so.
yeah.
It's like clockwork.
Are those arenas out there? Are they the same size as the arenas, the SAP centers or the forums? Are they the same size or are they smaller?
It depends. The three arena in Dublin is a little bit smaller. It's probably more comparable to like maybe the Mohegan Sun if you've been there, someplace like that. But others that we go to, like in Israel, that's comparable to the SAP Center. It's extremely big and extremely loud because there is no sound dampening in there. It's just a big metal shell. So when it goes off in there, it echoes.
I think you said last time you were on that was the pop that you thought was maybe
Yeah,
the loudest up until that time.
yeah, up until Dublin outdid them. You know, now if Israel wants to bring it back this year, if they want to go for the crown again, you know, I invite them to please try it. It only makes my job easier. So,
You we also talked about last time you were on the kickboxing series. Now we haven't seen that in a little bit. I'm not sure exactly where that's at as far as where that's going to continue. But when you go to places like Hungary and stuff now, are you noticing a more knowledgeable MMA crowd, or is it still their kickboxing their focus, and then MMA is kind of the added event for those shows?
I think that we're starting to see a turnaround in a more MMA oriented crowd. They definitely still love their kickboxing, and I would say that that especially goes in Italy, that they're still really into their kickboxing. But outside of that, we've seen more of a turn towards MMA. The fans are knowledgeable. They know the big fighters and not just the ones in the UFC. Like they'll know, you know, fighters from us. They'll know fighters from One, you know, and you know other organizations. Like it's getting bigger. It's like I didn't really think it could get any bigger because I was exposed to it in the States, and then when I went over there, I was like, wow, we have a lot of room for growth over here, and it's been cool to kind of be along and watch it happen.
Do you know
So
where? Oh, sorry, Ed, real quick. Do you know where that we're at with the kickboxing, Bellator kickboxing? Is that something that
Uh,
still exists?
I don't. I know that there are a couple of our bigger name kickboxers that have recently accepted MMA fights. I
yeah.
don't know if those have been announced, so I don't. know. I don't know what I could say.
I know Raymond Daniels is fighting.
Yeah.
Raymond Daniels, and then one other one, which I think he's hinted at it on some of his social media before. But yeah, we have one other one in the pipeline too that's looking to take an MMA fight. And then of course Denise and Hesdy, her husband, have both taken MMA fights recently. So I mean, just to keep them busy, they're definitely getting MMA fights. But as far as the next kickboxing, I haven't heard anything.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you, I mean, you and I had double duty not that long ago with Mohegan Sun back in February. What was your take on that? How bad Sergey Karatanov got hurt on that Friday night event? I mean, he was walking around the hotel the next day. So I just figured I'd ask what your involvement was.
He did go to the hotel or to the hospital. I mean, he went to the hospital. That was correct. What I thought was really weird was like when they said that it caused a hemorrhoid. Like I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, first of all, why would you put that out there? And second of all, no, that's not how hemorrhoids are called. You don't get shot to the nuts and get a hemorrhoid. Like I mean, unless they think that he bared down so hard from the shot, that he gave himself a hemorrhoid. That would be the only explanation I could think of. I just thought that was a really odd thing of all of it to come out as that's what everybody focused on.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it was a pretty legit shot. I was just reminded of we had that happen back in Bellator's very, very like early Wild West days, where we had two fighters. I believe one of them was Eric Prindle, and I can't remember the other guy.
Prindle and Thiago Santos?
Yes. They traded nut stoppages, remember? So it was Santos did it to Prindle, and Prindle couldn't continue. And so the fight was a no contest. They rematched them, and then Prindle did it to Santos, and the fight was a no contest, couldn't continue. And that was, for some reason, that was immediately what it reminded me of.
But weren't those were axe kicks, though, weren't they? They weren't even standing. That was one guy on the ground.
Oh, wow, one guy was on his back, and they were axe kicks straight down. There was no mistaking what happened. But wow. I just immediately flashed back to some of our early day hijinks.
Well, as far as the hemorrhoid or whatever thing is concerned, I mean, I remember back in when I did my back in my karate days when we would spar full contact, I was an idiot in my 20s, so I took a shot. It's what made me wear a cup ever since. But I took a shot that was pretty hard, and not only did it drop me, but I remember feeling like I was gonna throw up because it went all the way up. Yes. It went all the way up into my stomach.
Your stomach just it's an awful feeling.
Yeah.
So I don't wear a cup when I roll jiu-jitsu, and I know it's a big debate in the jiu-jitsu community on whether or not you should. Yeah. I don't, but there are times I definitely wish I had one on.
Oh yeah. I tore my groin doing karate too, so that's one of the reasons I always wear a cup. Just all the time, but I've definitely gotten the heat for wearing it. But I'm just like, and I know you can't wear them in certain competitions, and I'm just like, then I won't compete in those because I gotta wear a cup. I've gotten heat for wearing a cup and a mouthpiece, but I mean, there's dudes walking around that have lost teeth, and obviously, many a match stopped in front of me because dudes took a heel to the groin. So it's like, I'd rather play it safe.
I don't think anybody blames you.
But I mean, so speaking of playing it safe, so it seems like every time there's a bare knuckle boxing event, usually I want to say with BKFC in particular, the sport seems to be trending like more than it normally is with the other promotions. And then afterwards, I was at the BKFC media thing in New York last week, and obviously they put up the main event aftermath photos. And everyone's talking about how bad Artem Lobov's and Jason Knight's face looked. So, as in your experience in dealing with cuts and stuff, I mean, is that something that you think is going to be a turnoff for the sport? Will it ever get bigger than it is right now, or what's your opinion?
I actually just had this conversation with my wife yesterday in the car because she asked me the same question. And first of all, I want to say that I'm a fan. I love watching it. I think it's amazing. And what I said to her is that bare knuckle fighting is what MMA fans really want to see. You always have the Just Bleed crowd, like those fans. The
Yeah.
ones that boo the second everyone goes to the ground, that are really just looking for violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bare knuckle is what they really want to see. Kickboxing, it isn't going to be, grotesque enough for them, and MMA is going to move too slow for them. Bare knuckle is what they're looking for. So I definitely think that there is an audience there, and I would doubt that it's going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, there's nothing inherently, different. I mean, the rule sets general boxing rules, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So,
if you choose to step in there, mutual combat. I've always just had that opinion that if two men want to fight, they should be allowed to fight, or women.
so with your I'm sorry, man. He just said something that made me think of something else. Get with your field of, I mean, obviously your field of helping folks not bleed. Are all the cut men excited about this sport and looking?
Yeah,
Like,
actually,
throwing it in?
I was talking to somebody about that. I was like, that's a challenge. Like, if you want to see if you've got the right stuff, man, you go work a bare knuckle fight. And they've got good guys. All of the bare knuckle promotions have been really good about hiring top quality cutmen. Like, that, none of them are slacking. None of the major ones that you've seen televised or advertised have slacked in the slightest with their cutmen. I was surprised, because that's normally where new promotions and stuff kind of slack first. That they never forget a ring girl, but the cutmen can wait. And so I was surprised to see that not only were they employing cutmen, but good ones, and flying them in and taking care of them. So, like, kudos to them.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the event. I thought it was just beautiful violence. I couldn't maintain myself during that main
It was
event.
just exciting. Yeah.
It's new in a sense. It's new old, for people that watch the old UFC stuff. But it really, it kind of always has that you don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, you watch enough MMA events, you kind of can, what's going to happen. Every once in a while we get something really over the top. But in this, you don't know. I mean, God forbid somebody loses an eye or something like that. But in this, it almost appears like that could happen. And I know that's crazy and not something we're rooting for, but I still go back and watch the old UFC 2 tapes.
Yes.
Orlando Veet soccer kicking Lucarelli and Scott Morris and stuff like that. And
we
maybe
watch NASCAR for the crashes, right? Like,
yeah, and maybe if it was on every weekend, we wouldn't feel the same way. But definitely as a cut man, that's some job security, A, and B, I would look into piecework for that. No more hourly wage or show
by the cut.
By the cut, because if you worked the Lobov or Jason Knight fight, I think you'd bank some serious cash.
Yeah. You know what? Those cutmen did do a good job on during that fight as well. I believe it was Paul Carrito and it wasn't Stitch. I'm not sure who the second one was, but they did a bang up job. Was he working though, or was he just there as a guest?
No, he was working.
Okay, because he's got a contract or something with Caesar's Palace right now, and so I know that MMA they have him locked up for MMA, but I'm not sure how that falls for boxing and bare knuckle boxing.
Yeah, he definitely worked a couple of the other fights. I can't recall the main event.
Okay, all right. So like I said, they're not skimping.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask is because the last time we had you on, you talked about how you do more hand wrapping than actually working cuts. So for something like, do you have to learn a varied technique for wrapping hands for a sport like bare knuckle boxing?
No, it's pretty easy actually. You can't wrap. So normally, you could wrap, gauze up to here, around the knuckles. Here, it's just it has to stop here. You can't go past that. So you notice a lot of them had just wraps going around here. This is the part that breaks anyway. So anything that we put over the knuckles, the majority of that is just for fighter comfort, so their hands don't get sore. But with this, like, we're still allowed to at least kind of stabilize, the area that's going to break. I mean, we didn't see a ton of broken hands come out of this, which was actually surprising to me. It was a little study we could kind of do, to see. Yeah. But we do have some fighters that don't wrap their hands at all or do really minimal wraps, even in MMA, and they still break. Like, Brian Moore is a really great example of somebody who is now a true believer in good hand wraps, because he had very, very light ones in his last one, and he broke both hands in that fight. So I would still suggest wrapping hands for sure, but they're allowing them at least to do enough minimal wrap that should be taking care of them. But no, that wrap takes to answer the main question, that wrap takes about 3 minutes to do.
Oh wow!
So,
Each hand or the for both hands?
for both hands, it's
Okay.
a pretty simple wrap.
For people listening, the wrap for the bare knuckle is about 2 inches or so under the knuckle, as opposed to being able to cover the knuckles in modern MMA.
Right. Like if you took a glove and you cut it off, just below the knuckles, that's what you would be allowed to have on your hand.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting because the funny thing is, like, I noticed a lot of fight. You talked about breakage, and a lot of fighters seemed after, like, and I'm sure Matt probably remembers some of it too. Watching the fight, like Lobov especially, when he was done, he kept checking one of his knuckles, like to see if something
Yeah.
happened. And then there's always these photos of their swollen hands
Yeah.
afterwards, swollen bloody hands. So I feel like Hawkins is a just bleed guy.
I haven't always been, but I've kind of reverted back to it a little bit now with the probably because we get so much MMA, and now I just like the nostalgic feel of it. Same reason I like to watch One and the knees to the head, or Ryzen with the soccer kicks and stuff like that. It's just another dimension of the fight game. And on a weekend where there's not a UFC or Bellator card, I mean, it's just something, it attracts a crowd. It's something I can talk to friends about, that it's not just me watching some random fight from, Indonesia or something. It's something that's happening in the United States, and something different that attracts people to it. And I hope it grows. My only fear is it almost gets too big, and then you get an MMA promotion like the UFC. Maybe, I'm not saying they do it, but throwing their weight around, going into Wyoming and saying, "Hey, we'll start putting a show here once a year, but you send these guys packing," and something like that would be the only thing. I don't know if there's an arena in Mississippi that would I don't know Mississippi they care. I have a feeling they're going to love their bare knuckle boxing no matter what, but I'm curious to see what happens. It seems like it's kind of been an older fighters thing. I mean, I know Lobov, I was shocked to see, I think he was only 26. If you would have told me Lobov was 26, I would have laughed. I thought he had to be in early 30s with all the fights he seemed to have and just in general. But I'm wondering if this is going to be something that we're going to see. I mean, I imagine it has to do with the money they can afford, and you're not going to take this fight if you're a prime 25-year-old fighter and you're a top-ranked guy, because it could end your career really quick. But
I mean, we may see a future where we have people that start training specifically for this. It gets big enough that we see people using this as their avenue to get into combat sports. Like, they don't come over from MMA or boxing. Like, they grow up, I mean, who would have thought that kids would grow up wanting to be MMA fighters?
Yeah.
One day. I mean, I sure didn't when I watched UFC 1. I didn't think, that someday there would be kids who's like dedicate their lives to trying to go pro. But now we have that. So, I mean, maybe it's, at least right now, I kind of like what you said. It's those in between guys. They're not quite over the hill, but they're kind of losing a step. And bare knuckle seems to be paying the ones that are paying pretty well. I think it's a good spot for him. I know like Isaac Valley Flag did one recently as well. And he was somebody who like at that point in his life, like he needed that came along at a perfect time for him when he needed it. Yeah. So I'm glad it's out there for people like him.
So one of the things, like, I mean, in your industry, I would imagine you catch wind of like what states are going to start accepting it, so you can start looking for work. David Feldman, the president of BKFC, when I talked to him at the press thing before the last one, he said that New England is like the next location they're looking to hold an event. So when you hear stuff like that, do you start, like, how do you offer your services to someone like Feldman and his organization?
The cutmen usually pass the work on to each other. So we have somebody that, you heard a guy, because promoters from different areas of the country have just the people they talk to. So, the promoters in like the Northern Carolinas, there's the guy that pretty much kind of piecemeals out the work there, and then up in the East Coast. So you would just kind of let whoever that he's friends with, it's all word of mouth, and be like, hey, let him know if he comes down here, if he goes over here, I'm more than happy to come help out. And then it just goes on from there. It's a lot of handshake deals. Like I have to be honest, like you would think it would be very like, and that's the problem a lot of people make when they're trying to get started in my industry, is they come at me with a lot of like fluff and fancy and like resumes and CVs and stuff like that. But like, but who's seen you work? Who can, you know, is there video of you working somewhere? Or can you send me pictures of your raps? Like you can tell me all of these things, but I can't prove that. You know, I can't prove that you were working at that amateur show in Mississippi last Friday 3 years ago. So, you know, I need to know who knows you, basically. Prove your work by doing a lot of work, and then your name will get out there, and then we will find out about you. But if you just try and just send me and just have me take your word for it, you're not going to get any work with me. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's almost like photographers and writers in the sport too. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's
like
exactly the same. Like it's vicious too. There's backstabbing that goes on, and people setting each other up. Luckily, it's not as bad in Bellator, but there are other promotions out there where it gets kind of like I heard of one recently where they purposely told half their crew the wrong bus time so that the first half looked on time and the second half looked late. Like there's that level of pettiness, you know, in some of these promotions. So with the cutman, it's still crazy. A little Wild West out there sometimes.
So do you know if are you tapped to come up to New York when they come in June?
Bellator?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll be there for sure. So looking forward to that. Always interesting with the New York State Athletic Commission. You know, it's kind of a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
So Ed, you mentioned Bellator New York real quick, and I've seen some of your writings and or some of your articles, and I asked you, or I was shocked to see Neiman Gracie get announced for that event. Mm-hmm. Is that fight actually to face the winner of Fitch and McDonald, or is that a fight that okay? Because when I saw him announced, I assumed that he was fighting somebody else. It just seems like it's a real quick window turnaround. Not that Fitch is a heavy striker per se, and I think most people will pick Rory going into that fight. But it seemed like a quick turnaround to try to announce somebody fighting. A and B, are they really going to put Machida and Sonnen headlining over the welterweight title fight? I mean, or is it just they don't want to name the welterweight title fight because they can't yet?
Yeah, I mean it's card subject to change, like they say in all the posters. But you know what I mean. But the thing is, actually, Fernando Quiles, he's my managing editor over at MMA News, and he was the one that asked Coker on Tuesday about are you sure you want to make that the same, pretty much your same concern, and Coker was like, I don't really want to think about that because of obviously if somebody gets hurt too bad, the winner gets hurt, then obviously there's a lot of scrambling that they have to do. I don't know, Marsden, how many of the tournament fights have you worked in, and in your opinion, do you think that's like too? Are you with me and Matt and thinking that's weird that it's too little preparation time?
I mean, we used to have our entire format built around these guys fighting 3 times in 4 months.
That's true.
So I mean, like I've seen it work out.
Yeah.
The only difference is back then we just used to say that they couldn't use elbows in those earlier tournament fights to try and avoid cuts. But I mean, I do think it's a quick turnaround. But from what I understand, that's what they both asked for. Rory and John both said that they wanted to fight again as soon as possible after this one. I think that they probably want to be on that MSG card. Who doesn't? You know what I mean? So I think they were both willing to take the chance of the quick turnaround in order to get the chance to be on the world's biggest stage. You know, I can't blame them for that.
No, not at all. And if they were the ones who kind of brought it up or were on board, then that makes a lot of sense. I just when he had told me initially, I was thinking that they were giving Gracie some other fight, and it just didn't. I was kind of lost by it. But if that's the case, then I guess that makes sense considering you have May 11th, you have the MVP Lima fight, so it gets them back on somewhat of a even schedule. If anything, this April 27th fight with Fitch and Rory is the one that kind of threw everything off because it's kind of a late first round bout.
Addition, yeah. So
when you have 2 fighters like Fitch and Rory, do you guys like, obviously Rory's known to have I mean, when you think about Rory McDonald, you can't help but think about that, how many
That
times his nose
nose.
is broke. Yeah. So when you're
That
looking at
nose.
something, obviously, like you're looking at your the next quarter of your schedule with that fight and then the MSG fight and the fights in between. Do you in your mind, do you kind of have like not a plan but a prediction for like who's going to make it or who's going to be fit enough for the next fight after the fight that you're already going to be working?
I do not know. It's like, are you asking like who do I think will win out
Like
of?
or like how do you guys? I mean, not so much who you think will win, but like in your business, do you get concerned as far as like, well, this guy's gonna bleed a lot? I should bring extra tape or whatever the hell, whatever you got to do to
Oh
sit.
yes. Oh no, I do. I like for somebody like Rory, I bring extra thrombin, which is a separate medication that I use specifically for noses. I always have some, but for him, I bring a new bottle. Like if that, yeah. Like when I look ahead and when I know somebody is like is a bleeder, I plan accordingly, equipment wise for sure. You know, you know, someone like Caveman Rickles last week. He's a bleeder. Like I knew that going into that fight, I was ready for that, and sure enough, he proved me right. But we always kind of joke that we have this cut man on our crew named Sid G, who we always call him the cooler because like when he works an event, he literally takes all the blood into his corner. Like nobody else will have anything. They will be bone dry the entire night, not have a single injury in their corner. Sid gets 900,000 cuts a night. We don't know how he does it. It's like some type of black magic, but yeah, Sid. So if Sid G's working that show, and I put him in Rory's corner, like look out, okay, we're gonna see a bloodbath. I'm
Oh wow.
sure.
I mentioned it on the show right after that event, and I don't know all the cutmen names, but one of the guys who's been around Bellator forever, I think he's a cutman, kind of has a little bit longer hair, or
Dean Lassiter probably.
okay, that might be it. And if it's not him, then so be it. But he came walking up and he was talking to some people, and I don't know if he was just trying to show off, but either he was late or he had missed the Schilling Barry fight. And he came in and he commented that he asked some people if there was a bloody fight because said he could smell the blood. Is that something that, I mean, have you been around it enough where you can, if a guy, that was a heavy bloody fight, Barry bled quite a bit in that fight. Is that something you could actually smell being around it so much? Or was he just trying to show off to the girls in the front row?
That was just showing off a little bit, Yeah, that's just something we say. Like, so you hear the crowd, going crazy, and you're like, I can smell blood going on out there. The crowd wouldn't be going crazy without it, Yeah, that's funny. That was definitely Dean, first of all. And
okay.
then and then second of all, he's just that guy is genuinely a fan of fighting, and he is a Just Bleed fan. Like he's a Matt Hawkins. He's a Just Bleed guy. And I love him for it because of that, because he just absolutely, like, if you watch him in a corner sometimes, he gets as excited as any fan in the audience. And it just, like, I think the fighters can tell that. And, when you're a fan and when you really like what they're doing, and they like to be around you a little bit more than if you come off as like indifferent or something. And Dean is probably one of the biggest fans I've ever met. So
he's been around Bellator a long, I mean, yeah. I started going at Bellator 10.
Man ever Bellator.
Okay.
And he was at one point in time, actually the director of operations. And then he, whenever the Bjorn Coker thing happened, he left to take a job with the state of California, which is obviously a little bit more stable than working in television MMA. So I don't blame him there. But he still wanted to stay around and work as a cut man, and more than happy to have him. But yeah, second cut man ever for, because the first, I think 5 or 6 shows, it was just Rob Monroe by himself at every show, and then Dean was the second guy that they ever hired.
So one of the talking about smelling blood and stuff like that, and just being on the road, I gotta ask you. I mean, this is more of a personal question for me, because obviously you've done more double header events or 2 night in a row events, but like I mean, what do you do? Like because you're obviously there early in the morning for the early morning weigh-ins, and then you're working the event what was it, like Friday? Because Friday Thursday you were there in the morning, and then they had the Friday event. So you were there Friday, and then you had to work that night. So like, are you a coffee guy or 5 hour energy? Like what I do
Uh,
5 hour energy as a writer and covering for media, but I'm just curious as to what you do because
the the big white monsters, the zero carb white
yeah.
monsters. Anybody that knows me knows that I keep at least a 6 pack of those in my backpack at all times. Like I don't go anywhere without them because on that show that you're talking about, I had to leave at it was 2 a.m. to catch the bus over to Long Island, and so is that the show you're talking about the
Well,
Mohegan Long Island show or the Doubleheader Mohegan show?
the doubleheader Mohegan.
The Doubleheader Mohegan show.
Yeah.
So for that one, the hard day is the day of the weigh-ins, and because the first weigh-ins you just have the first weigh-ins and then the show the next day, but on that first show, second weigh-ins, that's the hard part because we get up at 6 a.m. to make the scale available again to fighters, who are weighing in at 9. So we're up at 6, and then we go through the weigh-ins. Weigh-ins will get done around 12:30. Well, that's usually right when I go to the arena. So yeah, it's just basically mainlining White Monster.
Yeah, the
And
other one, the Long Island one. I mean, I remember you were tweeting at me. We were talking about Krispy Kreme when you were on the bus ride back. And how the hell does Gareth Davies get on that bus and I don't? That's what I want to know.
I can just talk himself into anything.
Yeah.
He'll walk up with a drink in his hand, a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. He'll mumble a few things, sounding all fancy and British, and the next thing you know, he's sitting in the back of the bus. I don't know how he does it either, but everywhere you go, he can just talk himself into wherever he wants to be.
Yeah, I'll have to ask him to teach me his technique because I'm taking trains and spending money on tickets and stuff. So
yeah,
but sorry, Matt.
So for the fight attending fan, by the way, I use Red Bull vodka. That's how I get through my my double events. But
the classic.
So
I could tell from your photos.
Yeah, we've got all the energy drinks covered though. So any of them want to sponsor Red Bull 5 Hour Energy, Monster, vodka any kind from charcoal filter to Casamigos, we'd be happy to have you on board. Speaking of a doubleheader event, and we mentioned the McDonald Fitch fight coming up. The co-main event of that is Elimele McFarlane against Bruna Ortega. She headlined the second night of a huge back-to-back Hawaiian event in December of last year. When I see her, I've been to a handful of her fights, and I'm going to the one coming up. She seems like a real superstar, and it seemed like it was a real fun atmosphere, at least on television, the Hawaiian event. And I don't know if it's something that I think something's in the works again for later this year, but is that something worth going to? I mean, is that a different kind of experience than going to a normal show here on the States, or is it just a show with some palm trees on stage?
It's worth going to. For the audience there, I would compare to maybe like an audience in Dublin or an audience in Israel. I actually had a hard time when I was in Hawaii. It was my first time going, and I kept saying I'm from the States because to me it felt like I was in another country. And so when Elimele fought, it was like, wow. And they came out and they did the dance and everything, and the audience was into it and they came together. So for that, yes, I would say that it's worth it if we do it again, which I believe that you're correct that we're looking at that for towards the end of the year again. But it's worth it. It's just a different kind of feel, to have everybody like. We had a fight on our undercard that was there. They were both very, very good fighters and had good local records. But the audience was actually really into it because they had come from 2 opposing high school football teams. Like, even though they hadn't been in high school for like 5 years, like it was the high schools that these guys had gone to, which had the crowd whipped up into a frenzy in Hawaii. It's like down to that local level. And I thought that was kind of neat to see. And I'm like, why is the crowd so angry with each other? Oh, he went to this high school and we don't like them. I'm like, these guys are like 23. But like it's like the roots run deep there, like all the way down to like the kids. And so that was kind of just cool to see how into it they were. They love MMA in Hawaii, and they're all scrappers too. Everybody I met trained. Everybody I met, and I got some of the best training I've had all year out in Hawaii at Sunset Beach Jiu-Jitsu, the Ruka gym out there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it is. It was good
So
just for that. It was the Pipeline Pro was also going on at the same time, so we got to see the finals. Yeah, it was just a great experience for all of that kind of happening around that same time of year.
so what do you pack a gi or no gi stuff, or what do you do when you try to
I
roll
always
on when
pack a
you're
gi. I
okay?
pack no gi stuff too because most people don't pack a gi, but I always have one just in case. And I usually find we roll every morning before the show, which is stupid, I know, because one of us is going to get hurt one day. But every morning, we roll and we have a nice mix, and usually a lot of the coaches, will show up and roll with us. So we have a nice like kind of rotating mix of like black belts all the way down to we have white belts on the mat that
Oh
have
wow,
seen us rolling and yeah,
I
just started. They're like,
oh man, I wish I
come
could have
out.
got in on that.
Yeah, you can come down if you're at a show and you want to roll show morning. You can come roll. Like it's not just employees only. Like it's
Oh
fine.
yeah, okay, yeah, because I'll
Yeah.
bring my stuff. Don't play, man. That's
No.
one
Yeah.
thing. One thing I hate is I mean I'm pretty sure I've complained to Hawkins about it. I when I cover events I miss training, and
Yeah.
I mean I obviously I eat a lot of garbage because of I'm constantly uploading and writing. I have to eat a lot. I eat especially for Mohegan Sun I eat like a lot of burgers and stuff, and I come back 5 pounds heavier. So if I can get a rolling out there, I mean I try to do the boss room and workout in
Oh,
my hotel
absolutely,
room,
man. And
but
like it's a whole gamut of people. Well, Hoist comes out and rolls sometimes. And Danny Brenner. I think you guys know Danny Brenner.
yeah.
PR. He rolls.
Oh, I didn't know
He's
that.
out there actually. Yeah. And some of our social media people. Rich Chow gets on the mat every show day. So yeah, it's been getting bigger, but yeah, always have a gi. Like when I go to London, like I have a gym I train at in London now. Like it's getting to the point where we're going to enough places that I'm even having like home gyms in different cities. So that's just great. The jiu-jitsu community is really welcoming like that.
Oh,
So
that's cool. Yeah, I'll definitely have to hit you up next time.
yeah, for sure.
You've dropped a lot of weight over the last couple years. Is that mainly because of jujitsu, or did you change? Is there other stuff that you've changed? I mean, it's
Uh,
you.
So before I was mainly powerlifting. I was trying to hit that 1,000 pound club between squat, deadlift, and bench press, and I got there, but at a real expense to my shoulders and hips. Like I was just in real pain. And so the first thing I did was I just cut the calories out a little bit. When you're powerlifting, that community is very much like you got to be big. You got to, and I don't really think that you necessarily had to do, but I drank the Kool-Aid a little bit on that because it benefited me and my pizza cravings. So once I just kind of knocked that off, I got back on the mats a little bit, and that was an eye opener because I realized I couldn't even go around without gassing. I couldn't even go one round without needing a break. And so I started just going to jujitsu more often, and then I started the Couch to 5K program, which just involved like it starts off with 30 seconds of walking and like 60 seconds of running, alternating for 10 minutes. It's like as hard as the first workout is, but now I'm up to between 4 and 6 miles every day, going to jujitsu every day, watching what I eat. And so when I was powerlifting, I was at 225, and then I just competed like 3-4 weeks ago at 165, and
Wow.
then I'm dropping to 155 for a tournament in July here in Florida. So that'll be probably the bottom. I'm sure I'll probably bounce back up a little bit towards 165 after that. But it's been good because with jiu-jitsu and running both, I can kind of motivate myself with events. Like I can sign up for a 5 or a 10K, or I can sign up for a tournament, and it makes sure I don't slip up off the path. It makes sure I keep some skin in the game.
Yeah, when you lose weight, like I've gotten as light as I think the lightest I've ever got was 176, and I remember and I was a blue belt. I think I was a blue belt when I did that, and back then I remember rolling with a guy that was more advanced than me, and I remember feeling I didn't feel weak, but I felt very fast and energetic, but I
Yeah.
didn't feel weak. But he was tossing me around and sweeping me, which is normally something he normally doesn't do. And he actually said to me, he was like, the first thing he said after the match was, "How much are you weighing now?" And I was like, "I'm 176." And he was like, "That's too light for you." So now
Yeah.
so now I
It's a
like to
different game. It really is.
yeah.
There are some positions, especially like some top heavier positions, that I can't work as well anymore because I just don't have the weight to drop anymore. But I also
Yeah.
don't snore now, and my wife likes that, so I think it's an even trade-off.
Oh
You know?
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've been there. I mean, when I used to live with somebody, I mean, when my weight was up, she knew because I was snoring. So
It's the first
Well,
thing that
no,
what's that?
that's can't be a bad trade-off.
Yeah.
Keep the wife
Yeah.
happy. I imagine that's better than not. But I was gonna say, no, transitioning from somebody who eventually had weight issues brings us kind of over to the UFC card this weekend. UFC 236
Good.
from Atlanta. Which we actually a couple guys who've had weight issues, but in the co-main event, Kelvin Gastelum, who had several issues at the welterweight 170-pound division, has really found a home at 185. Other than his loss to Chris Weidman, who's a gigantic middleweight, he's really held his own with victories over Jacare and a few other big stars at that. He faces off against Israel Adesanya, the kickboxing star who's undefeated in MMA at 16-0. It's a interim middleweight championship bout due to the health issues of Whitaker, the champ. What do you think, Ed? Is that a fight you've looked into? And
Oh yeah, I actually spent my whole lunch break today doing research and stuff for my breakdowns for both SureDog and MMAnews.com. So you're asking about the actually with Gastelum and Adesanya or
yeah, that was. I mean, that's the one I'm asking about. We'll get to the
so that one in particular. I mean, I know a lot of people are quick to pick Adesanya because he's like the new young rising star. But when I was looking back at it, I'm looking at Gaslam's actually younger than him. Number one and number two. I mean, it's only by a couple of years, so it really doesn't matter. But number two, I think his resume and quality of opponents and fights that he's had for what's on the table and what's at stake, I think carrying that experience with him gives him an edge. And I feel like if he lands anything or gets a hold of Adesanya, it's definitely going to be. I don't see him finishing him, but I think he could pull off a decision. So that's I actually picked Gastelum for that.
What do you say, Matt?
I'm afraid of Adesanya because I don't want to get kind of McGregor'd again, and by that I mean where I get really excited about somebody on the come up and they're really there, and then they get exposed with one glaring weakness, or like kind of like Ronda did, kind of got exposed a little bit after she was a quick rise to the top. And so I agree. I'm leaning towards Kelvin on this one, just because of experience and just more versatility. I think he's just a better all-around fighter from what I've seen, because I haven't seen that much from Adesanya yet. At least as far as him being really threatened or challenged and having to persevere through anything. So until you've proven that you can come through a real battle, I'm always going to kind of pick against you, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I that makes three of us then, because I pretty much fall into the same category there. I think Kelvin, who comes from a wrestling base, at least that's what he came kind of up with. That was his strong suit on The Ultimate Fighter when he beat guys like Hall and eventually beat Hall for the title there for The Ultimate Fighter. So I think that wrestling could get into this. At least I think it would be a smart move on his part to try to drag Adesanya down to the mat. And although Israel's done fairly well in his fight so far on the ground, I don't think he's dealt with anybody that can bring that much pressure.
Right.
I also have said on the show several times in other title fights, and I'm not always right, but even though he's 16-0 undefeated, until a guy really gets under the real bright lights of a title fight and has to deal with all the extra media. I know he's headlined an Ultimate Fighter event, but this is a bigger deal.
That's not the same. Yeah, that's not the same.
No. That's in front of 5,000 people in Las Vegas in the Pearl or something. This is going to be 20,000 people in Atlanta. So I always feel like he might go on to become a great champion, but I generally feel like their first shot at it, they tend to at least not go fight up to their full ability, and sometimes they get through and they get the win and they learn from that. But I feel like this is going to be a case where he's probably going to get beat up a little bit. A 5-round fight.
I think he's being pushed a little fast. I just do. Like I don't necessarily know that we're there yet for this.
Well, that's what I think. That's where I think Bellator does a better job than the UFC. And I know the UFC is bringing in heavy loads of money on some of these fights, but I feel like they do push their guys. The Darren Tills.
They do. And we catch crap the other direction for that, where people say that we string them along too long, we take too long to build them up. I'm sure the answer is somewhere in the middle, but yeah, I'd rather do it our way than theirs.
Yeah, I mean, in the long run, I think your way is the better way, because even if it takes another year for somebody to get that fight, by the time they get there, they've already, been through a war. They've tasted their own blood. They've they've been kicked in the groin. They've taken an eye gouge. They've gotten to a point where they've reached it. And Adesanya's got a million kickboxing bouts, so he's clearly got experience. But in a 5-round fight, I feel if Gastelum's able to take him down, I think he's going to finish him late in the 4th, maybe early in the 5th, by submission or even TKO, just due to exhaustion of, if he fights a smart game plan. Kelvin might go out there, dance around, and get blasted real quick too.
I mean, I hope not. The first thing I would do would be I would shoot right away if it were me.
That's how we always go, but never be the case.
Because he's had, if we're measuring Adesanya by how he did against Anderson Silva, this is not the Anderson Silva of old. He this is the past his prime Anderson Silva that he went the distance and won a decision against. And Gastelum's lost, but he's been submitted. He hasn't been knocked out yet. And I don't know if Adesanya has the pop to. I mean, obviously a good liver shot will drop anybody, but I think Gastelum's just a little. I don't think he's faced anyone quite as durable as Gastelum. And again, just the overall experience and the resume of guys he's faced and won and lost against. I think that's all in his favor.
Well, transitioning then from a durable fighter, we got two incredibly durable fighters in the main event that night. Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier. I mean, from a just bleed guy, I guess I am like now. I mean, these are two of my current favorite fighters, and both. I mean, in the short time I've had a chance to meet the guys, two guys who are both really friendly, personable people that at least they were to the fans. So I have a hard time picking this fight. Max Holloway's the featherweight champion, 145 pounds, coming up to 155. And this is another interim title bout with the due to all the chaos taking place at the lightweight that Ed and I have put a kibosh on talking about. Unless it's fight related, we're not going to get into all the other nonsense involved there. But I'm going with Poirier. I just feel like he's going to be big, strong, and I don't know. It might be a mistake, but I just feel like he's on a mission right now. And part of me thinks that he's gonna put a hurting on Max, and maybe I'm crazy, but for some reason I'm leaning that direction. Matt, you're laughing. go ahead.
No, because my mind knows that you're right, but my heart wants Max. Like, I don't want to bet against Max. I want Max to win in my heart, but my brain says no. Poirier is the correct answer. Stupid. Like, why? Don't put your money on Max right now. But like, that's not the smart thing to do. So I agree with you. I just hate that I do. Basically.
Go ahead, Ed.
No, well, so I mean, I'm with you on Poirier too. By the way, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he already holds a win over Holloway. I just think when you look at both of them, and this is what I wrote in my piece to MMA News, was that they both evolved way past what they were back. I mean, I know they both lost to McGregor and Holloway. Obviously, they've both grown so much since then, but that doesn't mean Poirier has gotten worse. And to Marsden's point, I do think he's going to be the bigger, stronger. I think he's going to be able to force himself on Holloway a little more. And I also think that being on the shelf, and I didn't write this, I just wrote this down now on my notebook. I think being on the shelf waiting for his shot for so damn long has not only given him time to come in fresher, but just to want it more too. So I got Poirier in the main event.
With all this said, Poirier in his first title fight, so that could be an issue. We just talked about with Israel. He's been main eventing before. his only other real, I mean, other than his main events, but the fight that really had a spotlight on him was when he fought Conor McGregor, and he probably had one of his worst performances uh, in any of his fights that I can recall from his days in Louisiana. Honestly, in that fight, he didn't put up much of a fight, and he got crumbled by McGregor. So, you know, I kind of feel the same way. You know, part of me wants Holloway to win and carry on with what he's doing, but Poirier's been in so many damn wars, and this will be his 30th fight. You know, him winning a title would be a really cool thing, and one of the most well-deserved journeys to get to this point. So it's kind of weird. We both have the same. All three of us have the same picks.
Yeah,
I think we all picked the underdog on the betting side. So maybe we should work out a little parlay.
On the lines. I'm surprised by that, actually.
I was too, but yeah, no, Matt's right. They both are underdogs.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
So we'll see, but yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be a fun night of fights. Either way, I don't think that main event can be boring in any way. I can't picture any scenario where that's the case, barring some kind of crazy freak injury or a hemorrhoid being produced by a her kick early.
Now, is this the first one, or have they moved completely over to the ESPN Plus pay-per-view model? That's we're there now. Okay.
That's going to be the other interesting thing that
is this the first one?
Yeah.
It's under. Yeah. Okay. All right. Because I didn't know that they'd done one yet. So okay, that'll be interesting to see too. So
you're gonna make Ed's eyes bleed. He is anti.
Sorry. That's all.
That's matter. I think so. I'm only worried about if I go to the bars that I normally go to watch the pay-per-views, if they're even number one aware of it, because I think I told you last time, Matt, that the one of the Hooters by me didn't even know about the whole thing with DirecTV and that back and forth that happened for 235, I believe it was, and now this one's happening. I was talking to Nolan King about it too. I'm like, what are they going to get some guy with his smartphone connect to the Wi-Fi in the bar and broadcast the whole event? Yeah.
I told you that if there's some kind of outage or some kind of bad bandwidth situation, I mean, I'm not technology.
Well, yeah, the internet's going to be your main thing. I mean, because you can have it on a Roku or or something like that, a Fire Stick. But yeah, if you've got, I mean, most of these bars don't have the best internet.
No. And if you've charged a bunch of drunk people $10 to get in there, and all of a sudden it goes out in the middle of the main event, I wouldn't want to be the bouncer that night. That's going to be an ugly scene. I don't know how it's going to work. I saw Dana White tweeting stuff out, and they're trying to get the word out. But I also saw a poll by Gross. I don't remember which writer it was, but it wasn't good. It was 50% of the people said we're out. This is just another. Man. I'm not taking this step. And given it was only 800 votes, but when you got 800 people voting and 400 of them are saying this is one line we're not going to cross and we're done.
That's significant.
That's it. And
I mean, I don't have ESPN Plus. I'll admit that
right
now.
I mean, I don't have it right now. I've had a free trial about 4 times. I'm not gonna. I figured out how to work that a little bit, but I said it, and I'm not promoting illegal streams in any way, but I just feel like you're going to get to a situation now where people are going to start looking into online streams for the legal way to watch it, and they're going to quickly learn how easy it is to go around that. And I don't think that's going to be, and I feel like that's going to be easy. Someone's going to type in Holloway versus Poirier UFC 236 stream, and sure, ESPN Plus might pop up there, but there's going to be about 17 other things that they might click on first.
Reddit has a thread for every event. I mean, it's just right there.
Really
the first search result. If you type in, UFC 237 streaming, the first search result is to the Reddit link.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about that. But those are people who are kind of computer savvy, already know that. I'm talking about the the 60-year-old guy who's trying to figure out how to watch the fight, who's ordered it on DirecTV every month for the last 15 years, is now all of a sudden, who's not real super savvy on the forum scene and stuff like that, is going to either not buy it, or because he's not even going to know it exists, A, or B, he's going to go on there and he's going to type in like you say, and all of a sudden he's going to be shown another world where, like I said, it's kind of a mixed bag of things like as far as pain and stuff like that. But
ESPN must be giving them a lot of money. That's just they got to be giving them a lot of cash.
Yeah, they're known to overspend. I mean, if you look at their history and when they were in trouble versus now and all this stuff. So yeah.
Well, not to mention, I mean, I went on it just out of curiosity. So if you want this event, the bill you get is for $79.99. And that's for this event and a year's worth of ESPN Plus. So if you look at it that way, it's a deal in a sense.
That's not bad, yeah.
But if you're somebody who orders the event once or twice a year, all of a sudden you see that bill of $80, and maybe you were paying $55 or $59 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I just don't see it. Nobody in my I don't know anybody who has ESPN Plus, which is one.
Neither, to be honest. I don't know a single person that has it.
Yeah.
So there's 3 big fight fans here. None of us know anybody who has it. And I don't know anybody who doesn't have it that's going to look into figuring out how to get it. I mean, I don't, I just don't. So it's going to be interesting. We'll never know the numbers. They're going to tell us that 1 million people watched it. It could be 5,000 for all we know. We're never going to, I mean, and that goes for Bellator too, not to be biased. We don't know the days.
Oh, no, it's true. With DAZN, yeah.
We don't know
those numbers.
We don't know. They're paying guys like Canelo and I think Triple G and Joshua huge amounts of money, but we don't really know how many people are buying it. Now that's a different story though, because it was $9.99. Now they're changing the pricing thing. If you were a Canelo boxing fan or something, you were spending $70 on his pay-per-view, you would have to be an utter moron not to subscribe up to a month of DAZN for $10 to keep an eye on that. But
absolutely.
But yeah,
well, DAZN makes money from different sports in different areas. Like a lot of people don't realize, like in Germany, their thing is they have all the soccer rights.
Mm-hmm.
So they even have the rights to the UFC in like Argentina or something like that. Like it's weird, but their money is definitely it comes from a lot of different spots. But I have it, and I don't even get a discount. You'd think I would get a discount, and I don't. But I pay full price. But for the boxing, for a lot of it, it's just for the boxing. Yeah, it's just always something on there.
Yeah, once I know the Canelo fights, I think coming up here fairly soon. Once a big boxing fights, I'll re-get it again. It just for me, it was always mainly the MMA stuff, and there really I go to a lot of Bellator, so I miss a lot of the events that normally I'd be sitting at home watching. And
well, my wife likes it because she says she gets to see me work more because they show the dark fights too. She's like, so that's why she likes it.
That is a good point without having to transfer over to the Bellator app and work some of the back behind, moving devices and such to get everything in. Was that just real quick talking about dark fights? The last event actually had scheduled post limbs. I don't recall many times. We only do that in very special situations, and that special situation is the West Coast on a Friday night, and it's for the gate. It's just, and I don't think that he's wrong when he says this. That Scott says that if we start our prelims, when we normally do, which would, be like 5 or 6, and if we try and run them through, he's like, nobody's gonna come for any of those people because they won't be able to get there in time on, because it's a Friday night. So on the West Coast, because we would have to start them at, I think it would be 2 p.m. on the West Coast in order to hit our 3
4.
O'clock.
We'd have to
3 o'clock would be 3 hours prior.
Yeah. So to hit our West Coast feed, and in California, if you're not getting off till 5 o'clock, and we start our prelims at Friday at 3:30, like a lot of people aren't going to buy tickets. They're just not going to come. So when we're on the West Coast, we always do just a couple of prelims, then the main card, and then really our prelims are just on the backside. We just run the card in reverse, essentially.
You guys used to start at like 4 o'clock local time, or even 4:30. There was a time where there was like 2 or 3 post limbs, but this one there
Yeah.
was like 9 of them or 8 of them
Yeah.
scheduled.
This was the second time we've done it this way, and we've seen an appreciable jump in ticket sales by doing it this way.
Yeah, and I think your crowd is bigger. You get more of a stay around crowd, especially if you have like this one. You had the Rickles and Matthews
Rickles and
fight.
Matthews.
So Matthews being a local guy here in Southern California, he had a nice following, and Rickles is obviously a famous Bellator fighter. So he keeps the people there, and as opposed to, like you said, somebody actually asked me about that, and I said, because they were, and I go, you can't do it here. I go, you can't get there in time. I go, it's traffic. I go, even if you got work at 2 o'clock and you're coming from an hour north or an hour south from San Diego or LA for an event in Temecula, you're just not going to get there. The traffic is going to wipe you out. That's
exactly
Friday.
The reasoning. Yep.
And I said, unless Bellator wants to have an event where the only person in the crowd is me, I said, I go, the crowd will be Matt Hawkins. That'll be the only thing for the first 8 fights of the night. And I've been there when you guys used to do it, and when it was smaller, I swear I was the only fan at the weigh-ins, and I mean it was a smaller, bigger world now with Coker and DAZN.
Yeah,
and,
it was wild back then how small it was. People didn't realize that it started in the back of Bjorn's wife's office. Like, she had an office and he had a room in the back of her office that he was running all of Bellator out of with one employee. That's how it started. To see it, in Madison Square Garden now, that's crazy to me.
I mean, it's crazy to me as a local. I mean, I don't know if I recommended the book to you before, but I know I've definitely recommended it to Hawkins. The Raw Combat book by Jim Genia. It's pretty much just the history of how the sport came in this area and the fan base that's been in it as long as I have. We had to go watch fights in closed martial arts schools because they were like illegal, quote unquote, underground fights. And any fighter in New York that wanted to make guys like Matt Serra, Eddie Alvarez, from the region, if they wanted to fight, they had to come to Jersey to fight, in Atlantic City. That's why I mean, not to bring up Donald Trump, but that's why Dana White thanked Donald Trump and supported his campaign, because he was the first guy to put up with the legalization and everything, and that's how it all got started. So it's definitely that's why it's a big deal to folks around here when MMA comes to the Garden, especially.
Yeah, we've had a big following in New York. Like, we've always done really, really well there, like surprisingly well.
Yeah.
So, I'm always happy to go back there.
Well, we've had you for about an hour now, Matt. It's been another awesome talk. Do you want to throw out your sponsors or any of your handles on social media?
All social media is Cutman Matt, Twitter and Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram. Sponsors, as always, Affliction. We just signed a new year with them, so that'd be my 5th year now that I've been with them. So, true supporters. And then I've been working with Turp House CBD oils. I think everybody's working with the CBD oil right now. And then Mod Cabin to keep my beard looking good while I'm out there putting grease on dudes all over the world. So thanks to them.
That's funny.
And thank you guys. I always like coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Fans can always follow us at Combat Hour on Twitter, myself at MMA Hawk on Twitter and MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. You can catch Ed at Carbazol on Twitter and at Carbeerzol on Instagram. Looking forward to a good weekend of fights, and look forward to talking to you again next week, Ed. And I will see you up in I'm sitting nosebleed, actually, kind of doing a cheap trip, but I will catch you in San Jose, I'm sure, for the big fight on April 27th.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Thanks.
All right.